tending to talk about diversity and inclusivity in the poetry world and in small presses in particular. Can you hear me? She says she can't hear me.
Right up to your lips, like that.
Right? Oh God, as loud as that. Okay. So, Arachne Press, poetry, inclusivity, and the small press is what we're going to talk about. Because there's a lot of to and fro in the publishing world about what diversity is and how to achieve it. And a lot of talk about if you don't have people from diverse backgrounds in publishing, then you don't get people from diverse backgrounds being published. This is unquestionably true. However, if you're a small press like us, run by me on my own, out of a back bedroom in South London, I cannot be that person. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, what was I supposed to do? And one of the models is for small presses that you pick your corner, basically, and you publish people like you who are diverse. Now, so that could have meant that Arachne Press was a lesbian press. It could have meant that Arachne Press was a disabled press. It's neither of those things. We publish everybody. But what we do is we make what we do as inclusive as possible, and we welcome anybody who wants to be published by us, providing they're any good, obviously. And we do lots of events, and we make those events as accessible as possible, and we do lots of call-outs so that we get new writers from wherever that might be. But because there's a strand of conversations at this fair this year around pride and prejudice, we thought we'll talk about that then. So I have with me two of our about to be published poets. The books do exist, but they're not officially out yet. We have a secret supply with us. And so on my left we have Kate Foley, whose book A Gift of Rivers is out at the end of this month. And on my right we have Thomas-Bryant, whose book Erratics isn't out for another 2 weeks after that. Anyway, I'd like them to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Kate and hand over the microphone.
Ice cream cone. Does it work? Good. Okay. When I was about 12, my Auntie Margaret said to me, "What you going to be when you grow up? What you going to do?" I said, "Die in a garret," because that was what I knew that writers did. And even at that age, I wanted to be a writer. However, it took me rather a long time, although I wrote along the way. My next, less distinguished job was getting sacked from Woolworths for not being able to do the change properly. And the next was when the library parted with me because I couldn't get my head around the Dewey Decimal System. However, since then, in short order, I've been a nurse, a midwife, a teacher, a lecturer, and my last day job was head of Ancient Monuments Laboratory for English Heritage. And one of the perks for that job was you got to go to conferences. Well, as everybody knows, conferences aren't what you go to listen to and do. And there I was, walking along by the edge of the pool in Washington, D.C. at 7:30 in the morning before the morning session. And who should I see but Tony, who I didn't know then, lying on a recliner by the poolside. And to cut a long story short, 5 or 6 years, was it, later, I ended up in Amsterdam, where I've been for the last 20 years. So that's my biography. I'm very grateful to Cherry for publishing this book and the one before. which is my number 10, I think, if you count 2 pamphlets. So I'd like to read a poem which kind of does embrace this theme of diversity. Do I mean diversity? Being queer? Yes, okay. Wives. There are not many wives of women yet, even in Amsterdam. You'd think, wouldn't you, that someone so careful of her image as me, or so equable, she doesn't need to be, like you, would be, if not politically correct, at least aware of the irony. That tragi-comic state, stained bedsheets, barter and annexation. Yet we did the whole lot, except cake. And our wedding photos show the same raw, transparent grins as bridals do, and everyone cried at your brother's speech. And I, for one, am too tired after a lifetime of weights and measures to do more than crawl between our uxorious sheets for a little private poetry. So wife, whose wife I am, be pleased by this title made innocent by the kindly burghers of Amsterdam.
Cathy. Good afternoon, darlings. Can you hear me? Good, good, good. I'm Cathy Bryant, poet, various other things. I was born on Friday the 13th, and from then on things went downhill. That's the short version of my biography. I've been a civil servant, I've been a life model, and I've sold t-shirts from a kiosk on Morecambe Promenade. And, well, yes, I've got arthritis, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes I walk with a stick, sometimes crutches, occasional wheelchair, sometimes I'm just flat on my back but not going anywhere, and sometimes I can walk a bit without accessories. So, but my first poem will introduce me to you best, I think. All the statements in this poem have been made about me or my husband Keir, who's sitting over there filming. So these have all been said about me. And this poem is called Ms. Bryant is Dangerously Delusional. They keep the curtains closed. The plumber will say of the claimant's partner, he wouldn't let me go upstairs to check the radiators. Other people have found Keir Thomas to be brusque or even threatening. We were escorted by Keir Thomas and a friend who, weighing between 18 to 20 stone, was clearly intended to be intimidatory. I'll just step out of the poem briefly to explain that's my best mate Neil, and he was dead chuffed to hear that because he's actually a bit heavier than that, so he took it as a compliment. Anyway, right, I'll just step back into the poem now. They always keep the curtains closed. Catherine Bryant was, or was feigning to be, asleep. I believe she is falsely claiming benefits. Again, I'll just step out of the poem briefly. I wasn't on any benefits, but these are the sort of assumptions that people make. I might have been, but they didn't know, but that was the assumption. I believe she is falsely claiming benefits, therefore I was justifiably angry. I have had to give the claimant a wide berth, as her inventive malice and the belligerence of her partner causes me to feel nauseated. The claim is fabricated, the claimant is irrational, vindictive, and dangerously delusional. If she can write a letter, then she's not that disabled. In spite of all her disabilities, she was able to visit Heptonstall graveyard. To visit a grave. You seldom see the curtains open. These videos show her speaking readily and adjusting her clothing while holding a glass. She was apparently well enough to judge a poetry competition. She is pulling the wool over the taxpayers' eyes. She has taken every opportunity to pursue me with an excess of vindictive communications. She used falsehood in an attempt to justify all the fabrications and exaggerations with which she embellishes her accusations. Poet there, honestly, that's, wonderful rhyme there. After all, she does claim to be a creative writer. We do not dispute that Ms. Bryant is disabled. She has made an occupation of tailoring disability to her advantage. I am probably not her first nor her last victim. She keeps the curtains closed.
And as we all know, keeping the curtains closed is the worst possible thing you could do. So what I was hoping we'd be able to do in the course of this discussion is find out what works in terms of inclusivity, particularly in poetry, and actually what doesn't. I know I'm not getting it right yet, I'm doing my best, but I think we all have anecdotal experiences of things being less inclusive than they could be, and I think, Cathy, you have some particular things you want to say on that subject.
Yes, I always phone up and make sure that the venue is disabled accessible when I have a gig on, and they always say, oh yes, it's completely accessible. And then you get there and you find that the gig is up 3 flights of stairs, but they're a disabled loo, so that's all right. It's often the stage that isn't accessible, and it certainly seems to me as if the idea is that as long as you can come in and use the loo, that's all disabled people are supposed to do, as if we're not actually supposed to perform and be on stage. And it seems to be a metaphor for the disabled experience in the arts a lot, is that you're allowed to come and watch or something, but if you're not, you can't be part of it. There are lots of little exclusions. I've also had to crawl on stage over some crates of beer bottles, and I sort of crawled on stage and I couldn't stand up to do my act after that, and my performance, and so I did it sitting on the stage, and it wasn't until about halfway through I realised the audience thought I was drunk and just completely unable to stand, because I did explain to them after that what had happened and why I was doing it like that. And at the end, some very kind people did rush to sort of help me off the stage properly, which was nice. I assume they were helping me because I needed help and not just trying to stop me performing as quickly as possible, which is obviously another possibility. Okay, so Kate, as you spend half your life in Amsterdam, what's it like in Amsterdam? Is the poetry world different to here? Are there particular unique oddities?
Dutch poets, some of them are really good, deliver their poems as if through a machine gun, mostly. No introduction, no letdown, no insight into what they want you to know. And this is the sort of oddity that I first saw when I went to Holland and went to poetry readings with Dutch poets. I mean, the second problem was that, of course, my Dutch was lousy and I couldn't really understand what they were saying. So that didn't help either. There is, in Amsterdam, which is a very international city, a flourishing English poetry world. There's the Café Mesrab, which hosts both Dutch and other European poets, and the still European English, and of course the Americans. And there's quite a lot going on in Holland. My favourite Dutch poet of all is a woman called Esther Jansma, who's published, I think, 8 or 9 books now, and I can just about understand. But Dutch is a difficult language. Dutch people will always say this to you in perfect English when you speak to them. It's a very difficult language, a moeilijke taal. And this is true, but it's made me realise that language is very much more than words. I think I thought language was words before then. I mean, I used words as a writer, but it's body language, it's touch, it's the language of place, it's the language and the rhythm and the cadence of another language, which you pick up even if you can't understand the words. Is this the minute when I ought to read? Yeah, okay. So I've got a poem here about not speaking enough Dutch. It's called Jailbreak, and the jailer in this case is me, who's been too lazy to actually master the language. But then, of course, when I went there, I was 60. Jailbreak. I have made a little prison for myself. Outside, words fall from the trees like apples. The newsreader folds his face in plains of sorrow. Who is being carried out in that black bag? Not everything is hidden. There's always the language of lips that conjugate harmony, of bed and table, and a language of hands where tenderness lies in the stroke of the fine hairs on our separate skins. But isn't it time for a jailbreak? Shall I pray to myself to find my legs, to let myself out? I won't shoot my jailer, we've known each other far too long. No, we'll join hands and run like rabbits over the free grass that speaks in tongues and shout irregular verbs.
Thank you. Cathy's going to read us another poem.
I was supposed to read it at the end of the last bit, I just didn't, I forgot. There's no point in whispering into a microphone, is there? Yes, this is a grumpy poem about organisers of events. Can I explain about that? Or have I got time? Well, I've got lots of friends who organise poetry events in Manchester. I lived in Manchester for 26 years, and they often sort of phone up and say, I've been trying to get a disabled-friendly venue, but we just can't, we did try. And I used to say, oh, well, you tried, you did your best. That's great, that's fine, don't feel bad about it. I've stopped doing that since when I've organised events myself, I've always managed to find a disabled accessible venue. In fact, our venue had braille on the lifts and was really, really disabled friendly for all kinds of people. We had deaf poets, blind poets, all kinds of people at that launch. And it's because we prioritise that. And lots of organisers don't, they want a central location on a particular day. Anyway, I'll stop whining now and start reading the poem, which is called We'd Love to Be Disabled Friendly, but the venue isn't accessible. But everyone else can make it. It's so hard to find accessible venues. Do you mind? It's such a shame that you're worse in the evenings. That's when everyone else is free. It's impossible to suit everyone. Do you mind? We can't put braille on our products. It would cost a lot to change the design. Everyone would have to pay a bit more. Most people are fine with the way they are. Do you understand, or will you make a fuss? It's really such a shame. It must be so limiting for you. I think you're so brave. Do you mind?
just want to say about that. Yes, absolutely. But recently we went to a wonderful organised performance by deaf poets, and it was such a wonderful experience to see them speaking with their hands and with their bodies. And it was possible to understand what it was, what the words were that they were trying to get across. Just,
The difficulties of owning 2 microphones. Is that an accessibility issue? Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do as Arachne Press is every year we have a festival on the shortest day of the year, Solstice Shorts, which usually we have signed. Not every year because we can't always get funding, and it is the most expensive bit of the project. But I love it. I actually think that BSL, particularly when it's used in performance, is an art in its own right. And I learned BSL several years ago now, purely because I think it's beautiful. It's come in handy along the way. Unfortunately, I can't sign and speak at the same time. That's too difficult, especially not with a microphone. We did ask someone to sign, but we couldn't get anyone. So. It's not. Okay. You've both been published by a number of publishers, preferably without dishing too much dirt. What, and possibly without naming names, what have people got right in terms of being welcoming, for want of a better way of putting it, for both sexuality and disability?
do you know, I don't think I have a clue how to answer that question. I mean, the first publisher that ever published me was my first book, Soft Engineering, which came out with Only Women Press, and that old trooper, Lillian Mohin, published it. And I think the most welcoming thing of all about being published is being published. You know, to hell with the rest of it. I don't, and my wait a minute, third publisher after that, Shoestring Press, who published 6 of my books, never turn a hair, never ask a question, except about, is that line right, and should that word be there, you know. And again, the wonderful thing is being accepted and being published, because most of us who would be poets, and perhaps are poets, have a hell of a job getting through the door of the publishers in the first place.
Without naming names, partly because I usually dismiss this sort, but I have seen on submission guidelines for some poetry publishers, these days it's more common, what's your marketing plan? Are you going on tour? You know, are you able to do this, that, and the other? You know, basically, are you going to do lots of selling? And of course, I've got variable health conditions. It does take a brave publisher, like Cherry, to sort of arrange things for me and to put on things like this, because although I'm all bouncy and healthy and excited today, because I'm seeing all of you, I might get phone in a couple of weeks and say, oh, by the way, I've had a flare-up, I'm going to be flat on my back for a few weeks, so sorry I won't be able to do the next 3 gigs, you know, and that could happen. And so, you know, it is something that all the best publishers don't worry about. They just worry about the work, and then the work speaks for itself, one hopes. Well, one always hopes that. I was very lucky with my first publisher, because he was in love with me and did everything I wanted. We're married now. Yes, he's the stern, evil one from the first poem. The only trouble is he let through some poems that are probably not all that good, but, you know, we can forgive him that, can't we? And my next publisher was Mother's Milk Press, and again, it was very much about inclusivity, and she was just wanting to publish as many women's voices as possible, but it's mostly about mothers. And I said, by the way, I'm not a mother. And she said, oh, that's okay, everyone has a mother. So, you know, she included me even though I didn't quite fit the spec, so I thought that was very nice of her. So I found the small presses are wonderful. It is these terribly commercial-minded ones who aren't the biggest or best, I have to say, but some of the terribly commercial ones who these days want your marketing plan and want you to explode onto the scene and erupt onto the scene, and preferably to be slim, young, beautiful, able-bodied, white, and you can get away with being a working class poet if you're white and able-bodied, but this is to get into the mainstream media in particular, and it's this erupting and exploding. It just sounds like gastroenteritis to me. It sounds ghastly, but it has nothing to do with the quality of the work either. And I think it's important that publishers are supported who do concentrate on the quality of the work and do include people, and that's the way we get the most interesting stuff. Sorry, this is one of my bugbears, which I'm getting all excited about. I go on about this for ages.
Go on for long enough and you'll get the old lady bonus.
What's the old lady bonus?
Well, they sort of like pat you on the head and give you the odd gig.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because we actually had quite an interesting conversation, didn't we, on the phone after I'd... yeah. Actually, how this book came about with Cathy is quite interesting, because I put a call out for 5 or 6 to maybe 10 poems for an anthology, and Cathy sent me, and I said, these are bloody good. Did you not see the call out for a collection? Oh, she said, it's not too late, send me everything. And then I said yes pretty much immediately, and then said, but, and it actually wasn't but, it was and, what can you cope with in terms of marketing? Because I do understand that sometimes you're flat on your back. And there was this almost gasp of surprise at the other end of the phone, because I'd actually thought that there might be an issue and that I needed to discuss it, rather than just making assumptions. And that was a bit of a wake-up for me, because I thought, well, of course I do. But then I spent 3 years working for a disability charity. I have disabilities of my own. I have days I can't get out of bed. I get it. And one of the things that I do is I employ actors, not to masquerade as Thomas-Bryant, but to supply the need so that I don't actually have to cancel if something happens. I've got people who, some of them will work for nothing, which is really good, but mostly I pay them. So I have a cache of actors who will come out and read on behalf of the author if the author is indisposed, because it happens. And I mean, last year we published a book by Jennifer McGowan, who has multiple disabilities, and I honestly expected her to not make quite a lot of the gigs that we set up. In fact, she did all of them. I think it nearly killed her. And I did actually say to her, you've got to tell me if this is not okay. No, I'm fine. No, you're not. But there's only so much you can do. You can't force people to look after themselves. Okay, so I neglected to print off my notes, which is why I keep looking at my phone. I'm not checking Twitter. I'm trying to read what I've wrote in tiny script. Really tiny script. What was the next thing I was going to ask you? Yeah, Kerry Hudson did some research last year, I think it was, into how lesbians get published, how they fail to get published. And one of the things she came across was that possibly in larger publishing houses, there was a one-in, one-out rule, and that people would be approaching publishers and say, yeah, we've got a lesbian. Or they'd get a contract and find that the incumbent lesbian had subsequently been dropped because one was enough. Which appalls me. I mean, it's all anecdotal, but if that is the case, I am quite concerned. It's more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. Either of you had any experiences like that, or other issues with publication?
Just once, I had a story rejected from a magazine. It said it was, the editor said it was very, very well written, but he thought it would only appeal to lesbians and other women, he said. So I was thinking, so that's half the population then.
53%.
But apparently that wasn't enough. The story did get published eventually. So.
Yeah, I had a book review that said there were too many lesbians in my book, which I took as a plus, despite the clear indication that it wasn't.
Never had a problem. Lillian, of course, of Only Women Press, was a lesbian herself. And when I started mooching around, as it were, other publishers, it never became an issue. And the older I got, in a way, the less I care. It's obvious from reading some of my poetry what my identity is, but I've forgotten about it almost myself. And I don't expect anybody else to take notice of it in a prohibitive sense. It's just a bit of flavour, if you like. And I'd be really sad if I thought that younger women today had problems with publishers because of their gender, identity, sexual proclivities, or what have you. I mean, why?
Why indeed. Okay, another poem?
Okay. This is a poem about a joy that only a disabled person could have. There are still some patches of cobbles here and there in Manchester, and that's where this poem comes from. And it's called I Want One. Some facet of brakes or wheels strikes sparks from the cobbles, and the boy whoops and laughs as his mother bumps the wheelchair along. Like a fairground ride, she beams at me, and I smile back, doing my crutches waltz over the uneven stones, each unique like faces or fingerprints, with gentle moss in between. The sound and feel of crutch and feet, clack thud on the cobbles, silent softness on moss, transmitted up to my arms. The wheelchair sounds like a zip wire or a train. A girl, about 6, is being dragged along by her mother, her little legs reluctant. She looks at the wheeling, laughing boy in his sparking chariot and tugs at her mother's hand. Mum! Mum! Look, Mum! See that? I want one! I want one! And I'm often, when I read poems about disability or written by disabled people, how few there are where disabled people laugh in them. So, and it was a little boy laughing and laughing. So I quite like that. Thank you.
Kate?
All right, I'll read a poem about a fairly new one, and again it's a bit comic cut, about what we've been talking about most recently. Encounter. I'm an old woman, my bones are brittle. This is my stick. This is my wife. Yes, I said wife. No, I've no design on your kids. Yes, some of my best friends are Jews or brown. Why are you shaking your head? Because you're a Christian? No, I'm not laughing. If I believed in heaven, I'd be telling you they're all Guardian readers up there. And after all, love isn't just, is it, restricted to love between two individuals. I'd like to finish with a poem about foreignness and foreigners. It's called Foreigners. A flock of parakeets swaggers across this window, green leaves uncurling. We're not supposed to like them. They elbow out the sparrows, small brown truffles, chipper, streetwise, knowing how to charm, but no defence against the shiv in their backs from the careless, easy-come, flash-green spivs. How to be human, to put a hand on the scales that balance must and should, to love the foreign, the different, the strange, while keeping a hollow alive in our hearts for that lost brown ball, all our sparrows.
I could, but I need a copy of my book. I haven't. Have you got one? Oh, thank you, Kate.
The book only arrived yesterday from the printers, so it's a bit...
I saw it for the first time about 5 minutes before we started. I'm not normally this disorganised, honest. Secret knowledge. I know that the moon is made of chalk and cheese and smells of fresh apricots. By moonlight, cats dance, 20 or 30 at a time, padding in silent circles and weaving their tails in a complicated way. It is best viewed from a low cloud or from the uppermost branches of a yew tree, the sort that has caches of rubies and old gold coins buried at its roots. To find buried treasure, sing a song in the key of D minor about your mother, the moon, and some cats, accompanying yourself on the triangle or the rhombus. Your mother knows all the secrets about triangles, including the stuff that Euclid was too scared to share. She can tell you which ones bite and which can be safely eaten. The safest thing in the world is the olive, which is why Mediterranean people speak happy river languages and live to the age of 223. Rivers have voices, every last man jack of them. Only the drowned can hear them and are greatly comforted. But I've never been drowned, so I've never heard them. Therefore, I can't tell you anymore.
Okay, thank you all for listening. Has anybody got any questions? Feel free, we will share the microphone.
Yes. Can you hear me? Thank you for very interesting presentation. And I have some questions. As for your audiobook or MP4 file, do you do audio as well? Because probably your potential readers could be blind people.
Yes, we do. Our first audiobook went into distribution a couple of months ago. Kate reading herself her previous book, which is called, mine's gone completely blank, The Don't Touch Garden. And so it's our first one. So we thought we'd start with a short book because it's an experiment. So it would be not too expensive to play with. So yep, absolutely. We also, all of our live events, we video so that there's not only a sound recording but also a visual one. So our website is stacked full of videos. So go and have a play.
And also, one more question. I think the internet breaks most of the barriers to provide the readers who want to read authors' work. Does your website do some interactive element?
We're not that clever. unfortunately, so no.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, that's us done then. Thank you very much.